If you have ever thought about starting your own podcast, you should check out Riverside. Riverside is an online recording studio that lets you record podcasts and video in studio quality from anywhere. And if you click on the affiliated link in the episode description and you buy a subscription, you will also be supporting the podcast. And if you're going to start your own podcast or you just want to continue to listen to great podcasts, you need headphones or speakers. If you click on the Amazon affiliated link, you can get great deals on headphones and speakers. And if you make a purchase, it will also help support the podcast. Both links will be in the episode description if you are interested. This is just a reminder that this podcast has merch and a Patreon, and if you could contribute to one of those to help keep this podcast going, I would greatly appreciate it. I have learned some things as I have been researching this season. I feel like the portrayal of pirates in the media is very black and white. It is easy to make a pirate a villain in a story. It's easy to portray them as a greedy, selfish, vicious, and uncaring killer. But some real-life pirates don't necessarily fit into that box. Sure, some do, but some are complex. Sure, even the complex pirates are still pirates, and pirates are still criminals, but they are also humans. Ahoy! My name is Courtney Jewell, and you are listening to the 6th episode of the 3rd season of History Shelf, a podcast about history that proves that sometimes fact is even more interesting than fiction. 'Tis season 3 o' History Shelf, and I have titled this season, Yo Ho, Yo Ho, A Pirate's Life for Me. In this season be all about pirates, the pirates and scallywags that sailed the 7 seas and some rivers, looking for booty as they made their travels. Some of these pirates came from humble beginnings, while others surprisingly came from well-to-do families. But no matter where or who they came from, they all had one thing in common. They would be pirates. And for this week, I am talking about Benjamin Hornigold. Benjamin's birthday isn't exactly known. He was probably born around 1660 in England. Some sources I read had his birth as 1680, but genealogist Bayless Brooks, who is an expert on the Golden Age of Piracy, estimates Benjamin's birth year as 1660 because Benjamin married his wife, Sarah Moss or Morse, in 1679 in England. It appears that Benjamin was a Puritan, or at the very least he had Puritan roots. His parents are unknown, and not much is known about his wife or his relationship with her. The last time Sarah appears in any records is 1689, so it's possible that she died shortly after that. Benjamin started his career as a privateer. He was a privateer during the War of Spanish Succession. He worked for the British government attacking Spanish and Portuguese ships. The War of Spanish Succession was a war that started on July 9, 1701 and ended on September 7, 1714. It was started when the childless King Charles II died. After the war, a lot of privateers turned pirate. Benjamin was one of those privateers. Benjamin continued to attack Spanish vessels. As a pirate, Benjamin refused to attack British and Dutch ships. The Dutch were British allies in the war. Benjamin was an Englishman first and a pirate second. After the war, Benjamin went to the Bahamas. The New Providence Island was a pirate haven. The pirate den had dishonest merchants that pirates could trade their loot with. On the island was a town called Nassau. Nassau became the base and stronghold of the Republic of Pirates. The Republic of Pirates was a sort of government ran by pirates. Their government was a code of conduct. According to the code, pirates had to share their treasures equally, and they selected and disposed of their captains by voting. Many pirates were part of the Republic of Pirates. There are far too many to name here. There were hundreds. But some of the biggest names of the Golden Age of Piracy were involved. The Republic was dominated by two pirates that were bitter rivals, Henry Jennings and Benjamin Hornigold. Benjamin did not have his start on some grand vessel. He started out on what is called periquas. Those are canoes. He had a crew of 30 men that called themselves the Flying Gang. These canoes were actually quite fast. Benjamin sailed around Florida and Cuba. There he attacked small trading ships and plantations. His men would claim that they were righting the wrongs that were committed against the English sailors by the Spanish Coast Guard, which the colonies did hire privateers to do this. With one of his closest lieutenants, Jonathan Cochrane, Benjamin created a successful smuggling empire. This empire kept pirates stocked with provisions and ammunition. So, as I mentioned earlier, Nassau was a safe haven for pirates, but that didn't mean that everyone liked the pirates being there. Thomas Walker was the only official that was still living on the island. Thomas was not a fan of the pirates or the power that Benjamin was gaining. So he made it his mission to rid the island of pirates. He wrote letters to English lords, governors, and newspapers. Sending letters to newspapers actually worked against his goal to rid New Province of pirates. Writing to the newspapers and telling them about the pirate den was the equivalent of hanging a flashing neon sign above the island that said, "Pirates, please stop here." Many more pirates flocked to join the land of the pirates. As you can imagine, Thomas wasn't too pleased with this. So he got a group together to take on the pirates. They rode to Harbor Island and they captured some pirates. The Bahamas didn't have a court, and so they were going to send the pirates to Jamaica. But news got to them that the Spanish Marquis was planning a raid on the Bahamas. Thomas didn't want this, and so he left to convince the Marquis not to attack the Bahamas. Thomas had success with the Marquis, but trouble was brewing at home. While Thomas was away, Benjamin freed all the pirates that were being held prisoner. And Benjamin had plans for Thomas when he returned, or at least that's how the legend goes. In November of 1715, Benjamin told one of Thomas's sons, Thomas Jr., that if his family didn't mind their own business, then he was going to burn down their home and have them all whipped. By this point, Benjamin was very powerful and saw himself as the protector of Nassau. By then, Benjamin had upgraded his canoes to a sloop he named the Benjamin. But not every pirate was ready to bend the knee to him. A small-town pirate named Thomas Barrow said that he was the governor of New Province, but he was never a real threat to Benjamin's power. Benjamin had no real threat to his power until Henry Jennings arrived on the island. Henry had legal permission to hunt pirates, but Henry was also himself a pirate that raided Spanish ships and wrecks. Henry took and plundered one of Benjamin's ships. Benjamin was really powerless to stop it. Henry had about 200 men to Benjamin's 100. In 1716, Benjamin was the captain of a 30-gun sloop named the Ranger. It has been said many times that Benjamin was the mentor of a pirate named Edward Teach or Edward Thatch. Those names might not sound familiar to you, but I can almost guarantee that you have heard of this pirate before. But you probably know him by his alias. His alias was Blackbeard. There is not actual proof that Benjamin was Blackbeard's mentor. Sure, they knew each other, and Blackbeard did stay in Nassau for less than 3 weeks for his entire life, and Benjamin and Blackbeard did work together a few times. Once together, Benjamin and Blackbeard took a French ship named the Concorde. The vessel was loaded with coins, gems, gold dust, and other valuables. After they took the ship, they equally divided up the booty between the two of them and their crews. Another time that Benjamin and Blackbeard worked together was when they raided the city of Yakmel. In the middle of the night, they attacked shops, but they didn't steal much goods, but they did take the management clerk aboard the ship, and then they kidnapped a priest after plundering the church. But just because Benjamin wasn't a mentor to Blackbeard doesn't mean that he wasn't a mentor to another pirate. Benjamin was the mentor to the pirate Samuel Bellamy. Benjamin liked Samuel, who was also known as Black Sam. He liked him because Samuel had taken a ship from Benjamin's rival, Henry Jennings. It has been speculated by some historians that they knew each other before. Benjamin and Samuel got along well with each other. They both preferred to take ships without killing anyone, and they were kind to their victims. Well, except for, taking their ships and valuables. The only thing that they disagreed on was Samuel didn't mind attacking English and Dutch ships. Samuel wasn't the only one in Benjamin's crew that wanted to attack British and Dutch ships. Mutiny was afoot. In the summer of 1716, Samuel and some other crew voted Benjamin out as captain, and then Samuel took over as captain. Benjamin was left with a much smaller fleet and crew. Benjamin then headed back to Nassau. There, he did things to improve the defense of Nassau. He bought weapons, and he even captured a 40-gun Spanish ship and beachfront Nassau's narrow entrance. Benjamin was a captain that cared about the well-being of his crew. There were only 2 times when he was willing to attack an English ship. One was when one of his men came down sick, and he only attacked the ship to kidnap a doctor. No one was injured, and little was taken, and Benjamin even offered to pay the doctor with silver buttons, but the doctor refused. Benjamin released the doctor. When French pirates tried to press gang the doctor, Benjamin told them that the doctor was under his protection. Press gang means that they were trying to force him into service. The other time that he attacked an English ship was only to take their hats, and that was because Benjamin and his crew had gotten drunk the night before and they threw their hats overboard. Benjamin also planted food to make flour in Nassau to make sure that his crew was fed. On September 5th, 1717, something happened that would change the course of Benjamin's life. King George I of Great Britain offered a pardon to pirates that wanted to leave the life of piracy behind them. They were fully forgiven for all the crimes that they had committed, and they could even keep all their treasures. This caused a divide in Nassau. There was one half that wanted to continue to be pirates. They still wanted to steal, kill, and cause mischief wherever they sailed. but the other half had had enough. They were done. Some didn't even want to become pirates in the first place. For Benjamin, someone who saw themselves as more of a privateer, this was an offer that was a perfect opportunity. One pirate that was not ready to retire his sea legs was Charles Vane. Charles was quite the opposite of Benjamin. Charles liked to torture and even murder the people whose vessels he took. Charles and a few others took over Nassau, but he was ran off whenever Wood Rogers, the new governor of New Province, arrived. When Woods arrived, Benjamin did not hesitate to show his loyalty to him. Benjamin offered to hunt down pirates for Woods. Benjamin went from privateer to pirate hunter. Benjamin became a successful pirate hunter. He captured many pirates, including the pirate John Olga. He was so successful that Wood Rogers wrote a letter to London saying that Benjamin had redeemed himself for his past. Benjamin had captured many pirates and brought them back to Nassau in chains. They were tried, convicted, and hanged. By 1719, there were no pirates in Nassau. The one pirate that Benjamin tried to capture and failed to capture was Charles Vane, although Charles would eventually be caught and executed, but it wasn't by Benjamin. How Benjamin died is not 100% for certain, but it is believed that in 1719 Woods Rogers entrusted Benjamin to safeguard and trade valuable wares with the Spanish. During this trip, Benjamin and his crew ran into a hurricane in the Gulf of Mexico, somewhere between New Province and New Spain. Benjamin's ship was wrecked on an uncharted reef. 5 of Benjamin's men were able to build a canoe and escape the island, but Benjamin died on the island. While Benjamin isn't the most popular pirate of all time, he still has had a presence in popular culture. Benjamin is a character in the miniseries Blackbeard. He is a supporting character in the TV series Black Sails, and he is also in the Lost Pirate Kingdom on Netflix. That is a docu-series, and while it is interesting, I know because I watched it, you should know that some historians have come out and said that it isn't entirely accurate. Benjamin is also a non-player character in the video game Assassin's Creed IV Black Flag. And that was the life of Benjamin Hornigold. Thank you so much for listening to the 6th episode of the 3rd season of History Shelf. There are 15 episodes planned for this season. Next week's episode is going to be about someone that I mentioned on this episode. It's going to be about Edward Teach, aka Blackbeard. I hope you come back for that. A few things before we go. If you want to follow this podcast on social media, the TikTok is at History Shelf. The Twitter is at History Shelf Pod. The Instagram is at History_Shelf_pod. And the Facebook page is History Shelf Podcast. If you want to contact me, you can reach me on one of those social medias, or you can send me an email. My email is courtneyspodcasts@gmail.com. Courtney is spelled Kortney. Also, if you want to help support this podcast financially, there are a few ways you can do that. One is you can buy merch from the History Shelf merch store, or you can become a Patreon. This podcast is always going to be free, but there are some perks that come with becoming a Patreon. The first tier is called History Student, and that is $1 a month, and with that, you will get a thank you to you on all social media platforms that History Shelf is on. I will also choose one Patreon at random for each episode that I do, and I will give them a shout out at the end of the episode. The second tier is called History Fan, and that is $3 a month, and with that you get the first tier, plus you get to vote in a poll that helps me choose the theme for the next season of this podcast. The third tier is called History Buff, and that is $20 a month. And with that, you get the first 2 tiers. Plus, you will get a handwritten note of thanks mailed to you from me. And the last tier is called History Lover, and that is $40 a month. And with that, you get the first 3 tiers. Plus, you get to choose one item from the History Shelf merch store. You can choose any item, but the zip-up hoodie, that is the only item that is not available for the Patreon. You can also take out ad space on this podcast. I have a gig on Fiverr that lets you do that. Also, if you click on one of the affiliated links, there's one for Amazon and there's one for Riverside. If you click on one of those links and you buy something, that also helps support the podcast. But if you don't want any of the merch and you don't want any of the perks and you don't want to buy anything, but you still want to help support History Shelf, I have turned on listener support on Spotify for podcasters. The links to everything that I just mentioned will be in the episode description for this episode. But as always, the best way that you can help support this podcast is to continue to listen to it. And there are a few other ways that you can help out this podcast for free. One is if you are listening on a platform that lets you rate this podcast 5 stars and or leave a positive review. If you do that, that would be very helpful. Also, sharing this podcast with your friends and family on social media would be very helpful. Alright, well, until next time, keep learning, keep loving history, and come back for next week's episode. Bye.